Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm so pleased that you're here. I want to start this week with a correction. Last week, I gave a quote from the book The Message, which is an interpretation of the Bible, and I quoted Eugene Robinson, who I believe is an op ed for the Washington Post. Who I meant was Eugene Peterson, and it is a lovely, lovely interpretation. So that's that. Let's dive right into our material this week. And it begins with a trip to Costco last Saturday. So my partner and I went to Costco because we were doing some shopping, and you know what Costco's like on a Saturday afternoon. Everybody's there. And we were going through what we were doing, and we were in line waiting, and about probably two or three people in front of us was this guy. He was an older man. He kind of looked like an old hippie. Uh, he had long hair, and he was sort of, dressed in sort of a very rustic fashion. And he was with another young man who I'm making up a story saying it was his grandson. I don't know. I don't know either one of them. But there was obviously about a 20-year difference between the two of them. Anyway, so he's got his full cart. Again, you know Costco, you save more than you earn. And there he is in line. And he proceeds to pull out of his backpack baggies of nickels, dimes, quarters, pennies. Gaia as my witness. He was paying his order from Costco with coins in baggies. It took two clerks to sit there at the thing, and they're literally separating and counting these things. It was going on and on. So needless to say, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle going on in the line. So my partner and I turned because we didn't want to sort of witness or bear witness to the horror of what was happening. And we met this delightful woman, and we were chatting away, and we were having a lovely time. And we were just at the point where we're going to start sharing photos of each other, maybe cork one of the bottles of wine that we had in our basket, but we were making friends. It was a lovely time. And it got me thinking of something that Henry David Thoreau says. He says, it doesn't matter what you're looking at. What matters is what you see. Because, it's so easy to make up a whole story and get into all this judgment. And when we're that way, we're really kind of closed. Always the mantra of my life is from Ted Lasso, who gets it from Walt Whitman. Be curious, not judgmental. Because when we're curious, we're open. Adventures begin. We get to expand where we are. When we're judgmental, we're clinging and closed. Our reaction is usually in resistance. So this was a real lesson, because here's the reality. I know nothing about that man. I know nothing about the gentleman that was with him. I can invent a whole story and have a whole commentary on that. Again, it doesn't matter what you're looking at. It's about what matters is what you see. And from that place, I think it was Philo the philosopher. It's been said several times, but the idea is this, be kind, because everyone is fighting a great battle. We don't know what's happening with another person. So what we can practice is a level of empathy, a level of kindness, a level of being able to sit in a question and not think that we have the answers to all these things. There's this quote lately from Sharon Salzberg. She's a fabulous Buddhist teacher, and it's kind of become one of the compasses of my life. In which we set forth, we struggle, we lose our balance, and then realizing it, we begin again. We set forth, we've got this great idea, we're starting to do something, we get distracted, we lose our balance, we realize that, and then we begin again. And I have to tell you, that's the story of my ministry. In all these years, I've had great ideas, great intentions. I set forth. Sometimes they work, sometimes I wobble. And then I realize that I kick back and I begin again. Actually, more than my ministry, it's the story of my life. But I think it's the story of many of our lives. I think it's the hexagram 60 in the I Ching, but it's this wonderful line that talks about a tactical retreat. That sometimes when we're pushing forward and it seems that we're pushing against something that is bigger or stronger or more powerful than we are, that the prudent thing is a tactical retreat, to step back and regroup. Sometimes the best way forward is to take a few steps back. So, thinking of that quote from Sharon Salzberg, we start off, we wobble, we regroup, we do whatever we do, we do our best. And sometimes we realize during this tactical retreat that there's ways that we can look at things that maybe what we're looking at isn't necessarily what we're seeing, or maybe what we're seeing isn't exactly what we're looking at. There's this line from St. Paul in the book of Corinthians where he talks about, we see through a glass darkly. And I love that. That's from the King James translation of the book of Corinthians. We see through a glass darkly. And perhaps you think of that like I do, that my perception of things is contingent on my consciousness and my evolution, which is true. And that as I grow, as I expand, that I begin to see things a little bit more clearly. But what's really interesting is that's not exactly what St. Paul said. Because the word glass in Greek, of which this poetry was written in, is asperion, something like asperion, which literally means, or literally what it is, it's a term for an early prototype of a mirror. And darkly is the word that we use for as an enigma. So if you look at it, what he's saying is we look into a mirror that's an enigma. What does that even mean? As I ponder this. And so this is the beauty of kind of creating a talk or creating a conversation, as I kind of go from one rabbit hole to the next rabbit hole to the next rabbit hole. And so the rabbit hole that I went down on this one is, okay, if that's the translation, who's made commentaries on it? And good old St. Augustine, good old moody St. Augustine. I'm saying moody, again, like this gentleman at Costco, like I know anything about him. I know what he wrote. I know what he wrote about himself. But let me be curious and not judgmental. But what he says in this, which I think is really interesting, is he says, and when we look into a mirror, we see an image of ourself. Again, Thoreau, right? It's not what we're looking at that matters. It's what we see. And one of the first laws of metaphysics is this, is that our experience of anything is predicated by our perception of it. And our perception of everything, this comes from the astral body, it comes from the soul, it comes from our memories, our dreams, our experiences, our reactions, our relationships. I'm not sure if there's any originality except maybe in the terms of jazz and innovation of all our experiences. And these begin to flavor our perception. And our perception sort of like a story. And so looking in a mirror, what we are looking at is our perception of who we are. And that's something that we can consciously change. There's this remarkable and incredible 12th century Rhineland mystic by the name of Meister Eckhart. Meister Eckhart was, he was so profound, he was so radical. The Germans made him a saint, but he was a Dominican friar. He was the counselor to Hildegard of Bingen, another mystic from this area of the 12th century. Fascinating time in history, because you have like Rumi in the Muslim world and Hafiz, and then you have Francis and Meister Eckhart and Hildegard of Bingen, this flowering everywhere of these great mystics. There's this beautiful quote from the book of Ecclesiastes. where the poet or poets write this: God has made everything beautiful in its time. He has set eternity in the human heart without enabling them to discover what God has done from the beginning to the end. And I think what's beautiful about this goes right back to what we've just been talking about, which is how we perceive things. Because we can't see, again, going back to this idea of looking through a glass darkly. We don't see it all because our perception has limited these things based on the story that we are telling ourselves about ourselves and the world that we live in. Kind of going back to last week, the most important question we can be asking ourselves: what kind of universe do I live in? And so what can kind of give us a direction of where to go, of how we're seeing things, or maybe even more importantly than how, what would be a great way, a helpful way, a way for us to begin to perceive ourselves and the world that we live. And this is where I want to go back to this Rhineland mystic by the name of Meister Eckhart. Your heart's desire will fill your mouth, your actions, and your labor. You will know what you love by what you say, where you go, and what you do. Your heart's desire is easily revealed. Another rule, law, teaching of metaphysics is this: is that it all begins in what we desire. And is what we are desiring, coordinating the good that we are seeking, is it in balance with all these things? And what is the great desire? Again, if we follow the teaching of nature, if we follow this understanding of the divine, if we follow the truest thing about who we are loved in an unrelenting love by the very creator of the universe. That even before the foundation of time itself was laid, there was an intelligence that knew us, loved us, and desired us into being. And not in a way that was preordained or predetermined in any way, but in the natural order of things. All these incredible, wonderful, magical things had to take place for you and I to be aware in this moment who we are. Kurt Vonnegut says, we are the mud that gets to get up and look around. Lucky us, lucky mud. Or as Teilhard says, we are evolution become intentional. And how do we participate with this? Through the power of love. It is the very power of the universe. It's the very truth of who we are. It's the very essence of all things. So I'm going to close with a meditation which is based on a poem by another person who I think is probably the most understood person in both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible. And all of our misunderstanding is based on stories that we have and misinterpretations and mistranslations of the things that he said. I'm talking about St. Paul. And again, if we can practice empathy, if we can be curious, not judgmental, there's great wisdom in this poem that he writes. So if it feels comfortable for you to close your eyes, do so, or just enjoy the visuals of this video and just breathe. When we breathe, everything changes. And allow yourself to be in a curious mode and listen to these words. If I speak in tongues of human beings and of angels, but I don't have love, I'm a clanging gong or a clashing cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and I know all the mysteries and everything else, and if I have such a complete faith that I can move mountains, but I don't have love, I am nothing. If I give away everything that I have and hand over my own body to feel good about what I have done, but I don't have love, I receive no benefit whatsoever. Love is patient. Love is kind. It isn't jealous. It doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It isn't irritable. It doesn't keep a record of complaints. It isn't happy with injustice, but it's happy with the truth. Love puts up with all things, trusts in all things, hopes for all things, endures all things. Love never fails. As for prophecies, they will be brought to an end. As for tongues, they will stop. As for knowledge, it will be brought to an end. We know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, what is partial will be brought to an end. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, reason like a child, and think like a child. But now that I have become a man, I put an end to childish things. Now we see a reflection in a mirror. Then we will see face to face. Now I know partially, but then I will know completely in the same way that I have been completely known. Now faith, hope, and love remain, these three things. And the greatest of these is love. So thank you again for watching. And again, I invite you to like and subscribe and share if you're enjoying this video. And in a moment, you'll see the credentials. First of all, my good friend Brenda, who has created this, please support her work. You'll see her information there. And then your financial support really helps our ministry to grow and expand. So again, thank you. I wish you the very best. And to those whom you love and those whom you receive love, I wish you all many, many blessings.